As introduced, my name is Thina Maqubela, and I'll be talking hopefully about personal finance, and I hope we can engage at the end of the lecture about several things that I've mentioned. Just some topics that I hope to touch on today. I'll speak about poverty in the context of South Africa. I'll speak about passion versus career. I'll also speak about black tax and entrepreneurship as a way of coming up with multiple streams of income. And then I'll also touch on creation of generational wealth, hopefully. Just so we're all on the same page in terms of who I am. So this is me at 6, at my first graduation with my grandma, Umambele. The second picture is myself and my mom, Umam Chawe, at my second graduation. And that was at UCT. And then the final picture, unfortunately, my family could not attend my graduation in the US. So there I am with a friend who's supporting me when I was graduating for my master's. As mentioned, I am currently busy with a PhD. So hopefully, in the next few years, there'll be 4 pictures with a red gown. I am doing a PhD, but I'm not sure if I'm doing the PhD or the PhD is doing me. One of the two, though. So that's who I am. And I grew up in Port Elizabeth in a township called Motherwell. Anyone from Motherwell? No? Okay, 2 people. I grew up there and I was raised by the woman in the picture. My grandmother, my mom, and my aunt who's not pictured there. And all of these women, ever since I've known them, I've never heard them saying bus to anyone. So they've never been employed by anyone. So entrepreneurship is something that I grew up witnessing and I grew up watching happening at home. So my grandma and my aunt and my mother all sold fruits and vegetables for a living. My mom still does. So that's the context of where I come from. I don't think I am an expert in black tax, and I know the term has been seen as problematic. But I do want us perhaps today not to concentrate on the term itself, but what it actually explains. So we can debate the terminology used maybe after whether we should rename this context of black tax. Maybe that's not the perfect word to use. But today I want us to perhaps concentrate on what it means. So for me, what it means is there's 2 people participating in a race, and one person will experience black tax and the other won't experience black tax. And the one who will experience black tax has probably obstacles in front of them that they'll have to overcome financially before they get to their own financial goals. That's what it means for me. Yeah? So other people will experience black tax, others won't, depending on where you come from and what family you're born into. So there's some interesting points there from the Old Mutual Savings and Investments Monitor. One of them is that 72% of working Metro South Africans actually foresee or are currently supporting family members. So those are people who are actually experiencing black tax. And 83% of these people foresee that they will have to support an older family member in the future. And these are significant amounts. And these are amounts, percentages of people who sometimes fall into debt, not because of their own doing, but because of having to be sort of the hope of the family. And what does that mean, and how do those people navigate the financial space is what I want us to talk about. There is a book that I haven't read, that I'll probably read soon, that is titled Black Tax, a Burden or Ubuntu, that I probably would like you to motivate you to have a look at. It sort of debates the whole thing of, is black tax, is it supposed to be called black tax or not, etc. So there's the book cover there. what I want us to concentrate on, rather than problematizing this, but rather finding solutions in terms of, if you are in that situation, how do you navigate that space? And I'll be using my own personal experience to give you practical examples of what I've done in my own context. So what I saw at the beginning of my career is that I was the first one to graduate at home. So that meant that there's a lot of things that I wanted to do to take my family out of poverty and perhaps create generational wealth. What I've seen from myself and my colleagues and friends is that it's important to find a balance between your own financial goals as a person and also supporting your family. Finding that balance is quite difficult, but it's something that you have to deliberately do at the beginning of your career to avoid any problems in the future. And then I also think that it's important to create sustainable solutions. By sustainable solutions I mean, if you're wanting your family to come out of a particular situation, or you're wanting the community to come out of a particular problem, it's important for you to think about what are the solutions that I'm presenting such that these people can walk out of this and be empowered themselves. So for me, for example, I saw it as important to invest in my little sister's education, for example, right? So when I started working, I made a deliberate decision that I won't buy a car, and the money that I would have invested in an installment of a car, I will redirect it to my sister's education so that she can get better education than I did as a child who grew up in the township. Yeah? So that's one, right? So there I'm seeing myself as empowering this person so they can be able to be financially independent themselves one day, instead of me just feeding this person money, which I don't think is sustainable. So thinking about sustainable solutions is quite important. And then also creation of boundaries. I think we get excited. I was certainly excited for the fact that I was the first one to graduate at home. It meant that I was a hope to my family. But it's also important that as you're starting to do what you're doing, which is supporting your family, that you create boundaries in terms of, this is what I can do and this is what I cannot do. And people knowing exactly where those lines are, okay? I've seen people getting bitter because they're supporting their families. And that's not something that I think is healthy. You can't support to a point where you're feeling like you overwhelmed yourself. So it is very important to have those conversations in terms of what you can do and what you cannot do. That's what boundaries, that's why boundaries are important. I also think it's also important to do things one step at a time. So I think it's important that as we are trying to create these sustainable solutions, we think of how do we solve these problems one step at a time. You can't, with your starting salary, which is normally little, want to solve every problem at home, for example. It's not feasible. So you have to see what problems must I prioritize at the beginning of my career so that later on I can deal with other problems. Okay? And then what's also important is that you don't want to create expectations that you won't be able to sustain in the future. Yeah? So I usually make the example to my mentees that if kokweni with rice namhlanje, rice, for those who don't know it, it's a meal, it's a stable meal that at home, for example, we ate it when poverty was like real. So rice basically is boiling potatoes and rice in the same pot. Let it soften up. Put some beef stock in there, stir, nice meal, right? Okay, so if today that's your reality, you don't want to create this picture to your family that you have drastically changed that and then not be able to sustain that, yeah? So that's what I mean about creating expectations that you will be able to sustain in the future. So it's very important that you're careful in terms of what you dab into and what you can't dab into. And then the last point is something perhaps I learned very late, that is financial decisions are very emotionally linked. We like thinking, oh man, if all these things were taught at varsity, I would have made better decisions. I know people who know things, they know what it means to get into debt, but they'll go into debt. Yeah? So there's an emotional aspect that is linked to financial decisions. It's not about just the education, right? So for example, I make the example of how I'm very interested in property investment. That's not coming from nowhere, yeah? And I'll talk about that later. And what it means, the emotional aspect of me investing in certain properties. Why do I invest in those properties? Linking to how I grew up, where I grew up, and why is it that I'm interested in these things. So they're very emotionally linked. Sorry. So when you're thinking personal finance, I really think that other than just having a salary, it was quite important for me to have extra streams of income. Because believe it or not, no. Did you hear that? No. My salary is not a lot, basically. So it was important for me because remember I said I'm going to talk about linking passion with career. So I decided at a young age that I won't be working in Sandton, wearing heels and a suit and going to corporate. That's what was my decision. But what that decision meant is that I'm letting go of a potentially huge salary to come and earn what I earn here because I love interacting with students, right? So following my passion had a financial compromise, right? So to counter that financial compromise, what I've done while I'm at Rhodes, I've tried to create other streams of financial income. And this was one of them. So what I did here in Grandson, because of parents who were approaching me to tutor their kids and I didn't have the time, I started a business where I hire Rhodes students and these students tutor these kids and I get money out of the whole thing. Okay, so that was a tutoring company. So this was the first group of students and tutors, very small, intimate group. And one of my tutors is actually here today. And it has grown with years. I think we hire roughly 20 to 40 tutors a year, and we tutor over 100 learners in 1 year. Okay, so it has grown significantly just from the need and linking it to my passion and my interest. Something else I'm very interested in is property investment. And the properties on the screen, 3 of them I own, and 1 of them I'm hopefully going to own soon. Sorry? What's that? Oh, thank you. So as I said to you, thank you very much. So as I said to you, one of the things that I've noticed about money, the decisions we make are based on how we grew up. So what I forgot to mention is that I grew up in Motherwell, I grew up in a shack. So for me, property was something that I grew up wanting, right? So the whole notion of having space to yourself, having your own room, having your own, just breathing space. Just breathing space is something that I grew up wanting. So I don't think I'm just interested in property. I think where I grew up has an influence in that. So the first property I bought was that one, which is a property I bought for my family, my mother, mainly because when I was in second year, so we grew up in a shack and then we later were upgraded to an RDP house. RDP houses, for those who don't know them, it's houses that the government builds for people who can't afford houses. So I grew up in an RDP house, and one of the things that apartheid did, so my family, my great-grandfather owned a lot of property. So at some point, they were kicked out of those properties, right? And we went to stay. I was not alive then. My family went to stay in KwaZulu in a 2-bedroom home, big family, right? So there was generational wealth in the family, but it was taken away. So I'm starting from scratch, right? So because of that, unfortunately, it has created the issues of black tax. It has also, so we must see black tax as a structural problem, yeah, okay? So it's not something that just happened. It happened because, right? And because of that, what I've noticed in most families, we fight over the little we have. So in my family, for example, my aunt woke up one day and was like to my mom, "Hey, Miguel, get out of that house is mine." And that's a reality of most black households, right? Where people fight over the little they have. So we were kicked out of our home when I was in second year, and we didn't have a home. So buying a house for my mother was quite important. It was my very first goal at varsity. So that was the first property. And in buying that property, I learned a lot about property investment. One of the things that I learned is that to buy property, it's quite important that you build a credit record, number one. Okay, I didn't know that. I thought I could just produce my payslip and be like, I can afford, give me a bond, and it works like that. And they were like, nope, doesn't work like that. To get debt, you have to have debt. Okay. I thought I was staying clear, you know. Some of my peers had Edgar's accounts, and I was like, I don't want any of that. And I thought I was staying clear of debt, and I didn't know that debt actually helps you get debt. Okay? So that process of buying that house was stalled by the fact that I didn't have a credit record. So I built a credit record. While building a credit record, I was saving about 66% of my salary towards buying that house. So it meant that I pretended for 2 years that I was not earning the money I was earning, and I pretended as if I was earning only 33% of it, 66% I leave in the bank. And that helped because I was able to raise about 40% towards buying that property. So what this means is that that house, when I first entered it, it was not purely owned by the bank. 40% was owned by me and 60% was owned by the bank. Okay? And then what you want to do with property is, depending on whether it is an asset to you or not. So the first property for me is not an asset because that's where my family lives. Okay? So for me, I define an asset, a property as an asset if it generates some income. So that property doesn't generate any income. So what I did with that property, I tried to pay it up as quick as possible to make sure that I don't incur most of the interest by elongating the bond period. But what I've done with the other properties, which is they are the income generating properties, I haven't been worried about paying them up quickly. Because what I do is I'm just a surety. So I just go to the bank and say, I can afford this. And then the bank looks at my stuff and say, okay, you can afford this. And then what they do is they give me the bond, and then I walk out. By walk out, I mean it's the clients who stay in that property that pay for the bond. It's not me. I'm just a surety. Does that make sense? So I haven't been worried about paying those quickly. So they are debt, but you must be able to differentiate between good debt and bad debt. Okay? Just to summarize, what I've tried to do with property is try to invest in property very differently. So I usually call it property with a twist, property investment with a twist. I invest in property for the purposes of coming up with solutions for education. Okay? So the first property is a girls' hostel, private hostel. So I house girls who attend different schools in Grahamstown, private and public, and they stay there. And they don't only just stay there; they also get mentoring, tutoring, etc., which is stuff that is not normally in the normal mainstream hostel system. Okay, so it's property with a twist. And when I bought that property, it was really wanting to redirect rent money that I usually paid in the past when I was renting from different landlords in Grahamstown, and taking that money and redirecting it somewhere. So there I stay for free because the kids pay for the property, okay? And my exchange to the business is me being there and me driving the whole business, basically, okay? So about 8 girls are being able to be housed there, and we always hire a sub-warden every year. We're actually going to be advertising soon for a sub-warden. So a sub-warden will get free accommodation, free meals in exchange of them being a big sister to the girls. And then the second property, whose picture is very dark, sorry about that, is a township accommodation that I recently invested in. So I was saying to the previous class that when I was standing here last year, that property didn't exist. So what I've managed to do between the ages of 25, 24, and 28, I've been able to buy a property every year. So that property is a property I bought last year, and that property was me wanting to invest in something that won't require, I don't know if you know property prices in Grahamstown, they're quite expensive. So I was wanting to invest in something that is not as expensive, so I bought in the township. I'm from the township, Mosne. So I know people, some of you guys are from the township or from rural areas, and you don't mind staying in the township. So that's a student accommodation for students at Rhodes who don't want to pay a lot of money in town, but don't mind staying in a township accommodation. So that's what's going on there. So it's a digs, it houses about 8 students a year. But it's not just an accommodation in the township. It has Wi-Fi, bathroom, comfortability. When you walk in, with your surroundings, you're like, okay, I'm in the township, so I must watch. But when you walk in into a digs that would be of equal or better standards than you would get in town, for example. Okay, and then the last one, this is me hoping some of my rich people here will invest. So the last one is what I'm hoping to buy between now and December. It's a boys' hostel. And it's a take on the girls' hostel. There's been a demand for boys. People are complaining we're investing a lot in girls. What about our boys? Maybe that's why we've got gender-based violence issues, because we don't invest in the boys. So here we are, my rich people. Tell your dad, here's a good opportunity to invest. I'm really, really looking for an investor for that. All right, so that's property. I've explained Maqubela Academy of Excellence. That's the hostel, and that's what it does. I think I've covered that slide. And then I've also seen that it's quite important to use your talents to make money. If you like talking, talk for money. Okay, so I like talking, and I noticed that people usually invite me to various things to talk, and I did this, and I did this, and I was like, hey, I could be paid to do this. So then I started charging for giving talks to various, obviously I judge who you are. If I'm going to speak to an NGO, I don't think it's fair for me to charge. But if I'm going to a private school for which learners pay 100,000 a year, why not? What's 5,000 rand to them? You know what I mean? Okay, so it's quite important to be able to use your skills to make money while you're at it. Okay, so how you have to be able to monetize what you have or what you're given. Something else I want to touch on is Stockfalls. So Stockfalls have been existing in the black communities in particular. So Stockfalls, basically, it's our mothers, our grandmothers meeting on a Sunday and collecting money, and then taking that money, investing it into some investment. What's key about a Stockfall is that everyone who's in it normally has one goal. So back in the day, some of our families would collect this money. For some of our mothers would collect this money because they wanted December groceries. That's a thing. December groceries. Because December, everyone comes home, so everyone is eating, so we must have plenty of food, right? So they would combine every month. They'll say, you pay this much, let's say 200 rand a month, until December, and then we'll take the lump sum, and then we'll make sure that we are buying the groceries. I've seen that Stockfalls are a powerful way of ensuring that people stay out of debt. So we've done Stockfalls to raise money for property, to raise money for property deposits, to raise money for buying cars without getting into debt, to raise money for various things, basically. Just staying away from debt, particularly if that debt is bad debt. So Stockfalls, it's a group of people. So for example, in my Stockfall, there's about 20 to 25 of us. And the minimum you can put in every month is about 2.5, I think, this month. But you can put more, right? And then the philosophy of our Stockfall is that when you get money that wasn't money that you had planned for example, you consult and then you get 20,000 all of a sudden. You know how you spend money that you didn't plan quickly, right? So our motto is that if you get such money, put it into the Stockfall account. Because at the end of the year or the end of the 5 years, depending on the duration you guys decide to do your Stockfall, you'll be able to get a significant amount of money that you'll plan what to do with it. It's not always serious stuff that we raise money for. I know this other group that raises money for vacations, which are quite important, guys. You must go on a vacation or a vacation, whatever it is, you must go, right? To just relax out of the seriousness of life. So this year, our goal with my Stockfall, it's in its second or third year running, is to raise 1 million. I've never seen 1 million with my eyes, so I'm very excited to see it. Like, see a million. So that's our goal for this year. And we've been upping our goals every year. So that's what Stockfalls are. It's very good to talk about good, successful businesses, but it's also good to talk about which businesses failed. So I've run businesses that have failed. So what I did is that I told myself my 20s are for making those mistakes. That's what I've done. Yeah? Next year I turned 30, so now I'm going to be more stepping back from risk and looking things carefully. But my 20s have been, you would say, reckless. Okay, I've been thinking, do, think, do, think, do. So I ran a business which is an uptake basically from my grandma and my aunt and my mother's business. So they sell fruits and veggies on the street. And you clever people, you pass my mother and you go to this other supermarket and you go buy, ne? So I thought, you know what, shame these people really do this out of the love of doing it. Why not take that business and revamp it such that it can appeal to young professionals nowadays? So what we did is to do packages, fruits and veggies packages, and deliver at people's homes. Yeah, so that's what we did. It ran here in Grahamstown and also in Port Elizabeth. It was a success, but it was time demanding. So here's something about businesses that I think you must, something I've learned about running a business is that whatever you do at the beginning, people sort of get attached to it. So for example, when I started that business, I was the one running the WhatsApp page, right? So I will be very intimate with you. I'll be like, Dineo, how big is your family? Family of 5. Or how many kids? So that I can see what package will be suitable for you. Now the business grew, so it was no longer 20 clients, it was 200 clients. I couldn't handle that. Now I ask Atini, can you be the one handling the WhatsApp page? Now all of a sudden you don't want to talk to Atini, you want to talk to Thina. You're like, where is she? She was the one who decided whether it's spinach or cabbage. She must come back, okay? So that business really failed because I couldn't handle the demand, basically. I will go back to it in the future, I think. Another business that failed was a uniform business. So what I did, because I'm from PE, I'm a hustler, I was like, Grahamstown, small town. Let me go buy these uniforms that you guys buy from expensive places in Grahamstown. There's only 2 places in Grahamstown for uniform. One, basically. Won't name any place. So I went to PE, saw this shop, I bought the uniforms, I brought them here. You know what you people do? I keep on saying you people, not you. It's not you. You know, customers. You'll be like, hi, man. This shade of navy, I'm not sure if it's the one. Yeah? So the business was not a success because people trusted a particular shop. They knew when I walk into that shop, I would get the actual thing. Now Tina here with her black plastic bags, with all this uniform, it's cheaper, yeah? Is it fake? Is it true? Is it the one? You know? So there is a sense of, when you're walking into a market, there is a sense of people not trusting you, okay? So there is, the beginning stages of a business is about you developing that trust with your customers. Yeah? Same with hostel, right? Who's going to trust a 28-year-old who's saying that she's running a hostel? Who are you? Have you raised a teenager before? So that's parents to me, right? So there is a trust element. So what I do with hostel, for example, I first start tutoring your child. That's where the money is at. Why can't you tutor your child? They move from level 4 to level 7. You're like, tata. Take it, you know, take it. So that's what I do with hostels. Parents first trust me with the tutoring, and then once they trust me with the tutoring, I'm able to say, I'll be able to raise your child, okay? So it is a difficult thing to start a business because of that. Okay, so that's my conclusion, and I won't read it out. I think you can read it yourself, and I'll allow time for questions and some interaction. Thank you very much.